everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Palmetto Sports Daily. I'm Kevin Bilodeau here in Charleston, joined today by Teagan Brown in Myrtle Beach and Carmine in the upstate here of South Carolina. And we start off with some college basketball news, really out of the blue news that we got yesterday afternoon, right after we were done recording here. And that is the College of Charleston is in search of a new head men's basketball coach because Chris Mack has left CFC after just 2 seasons to take the job over at South Florida. This really came out of nowhere. Chris Mack's name hasn't come up in any coaching search news since the Cougar season ended with that upset first-round loss in the CAA tournament a couple of weeks ago. So this really took pretty much everyone by surprise. I talked to a couple of people at the school. They said this really just popped up on their radar early yesterday. And from, just a couple of hours later, Mack was gone and he was already signed into South Florida and introduced on social media as their new head coach. So lots of surprise from this one. As far as the fans, how the fans are taking this, I know a lot of fans for CFC weren't happy with the Chris Mack hire in general because they thought he might do a move like this. They thought he was just looking at CFC as a quick stepping stone to go up to the next big spot after taking a couple of years off when he got let go out of Louisville. So this kind of lives up to what they were worried about with what Chris Mack was going to do. Now CFC not only searching for a men's head basketball coach, but also a women's head coach after Robin Harmony left earlier this week. So the AD's phone is ringing off the hook, I'm sure, over these last couple of days, Carmine, and he's got a lot of things he's got to look forward to over the next couple of weeks as he looks for 2 new head coaches.
Yeah, that is a crazy situation, Kevin. And I know it's very new, but what do you think were the reasons that Chris Mack would up and leave the College of Charleston for South Florida, kind of out of the blue, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, the only things you can really look at are money and possibly putting more towards the program and towards his paycheck as well. But he was doing pretty well at the College of Charleston for the size of school they are. He was getting $1.1 million a year on a 5-year contract. The school spent over $3 million putting this roster together last year. One important note I wanted to mention also, Mack had a buyout in his contract that was at $1.5 million if he didn't reach the first full 2 years of his contract, which he didn't because he was hired in April of 2024. So the school is entitled to $1.5 million. Now, I was told by the AD they actually negotiated that down to $1.3 million when you worked in the fact that South Florida is going to give the College of Charleston a home-and-home series over the next couple of years. So still, for the college, that's a big deal because you take that $1.3 million and really you didn't pay Mack that much if you get that money back, but now you get to take that $1.3 million and put that into a base package for whoever your next coach is going to be. And I put together a list of some possible candidates that CFC is going to be looking at over the course of the next couple, hopefully just days, maybe weeks. But we know they have to work pretty fast because once the season ends and that portal opens, there is not much time to put a program together. Earl Grant is the guy that probably makes the most sense on paper. He was the CFC head coach until 4 years ago when he took the head coaching job over at Boston College. He got let go from Boston College earlier this month. So for a guy who's from the Low Country and who's been coaching here already, it kind of makes sense to just run that back one more time. I don't know if either side is interested in that, but it does make sense. Luke Murray is an assistant over at Connecticut. He's actually been in talks to be the next head coach at Boston College, but Murray has ties here to the Low Country as well. His father, the actor Bill Murray, of course, has a place down here in Charleston, and he goes to CFC games a lot, so I wouldn't be shocked. That BC job, obviously much more prestigious being an ACC job, but I don't know if the money you make as the head coach at BC and the money they put towards the program would be all that much different from what you're going to get at the College of Charleston. And really, Carmine, you would know, even if they kind of double what CFC can do, both his salary and putting money towards the program, really, I think at best, BC is going to be a middle-of-the-pack program in the ACC when you can take take all that money and put it towards being one of the better teams, not only in the CAA, but maybe as a mid-major overall. B.J. Mackey, the former South Carolina star, now an assistant over at Wake Forest. Bob Ritchie, the one over at Furman. That's a really interesting one, I think. He's got Low Country ties as well. He started off as an assistant over at Charleston Southern. He might be in line for a bigger job, though. That NC State job opened up earlier this afternoon. I know we're going to talk about that in a moment. That might be a job he's looking for, but I know CFC can maybe double what he's making at Furman, so that could be something that pulls him down here to the Low Country. And then John Cremens, he's the nephew of former CFC coach Bobby Cremens, and he is now an assistant over at Vanderbilt. under former CFC assistant Mark Byington. He's a name that comes up a lot in these head coaching jobs for mid-majors, so he might be a guy who's ready to take the leap for his first head coaching job as well. Carmine, I wanted to ask you specifically about Bob Ritchie and your thoughts on him being a candidate somewhere.
Yeah, it's really interesting because just a few years ago when Clemson head coach Brad Brownell was on the hot seat before this record stretch that they've been on the past 4 seasons, a lot of people, there was rumblings, oh, Bob Ritchie might be a great candidate for the Clemson job because you'll remember he was coming off the upset win of Virginia in the NCAA tournament and was a hot name in a lot of coaching talks. But from everything I've seen, and Ella Grogan, our Palmetto sports reporter, was just behind the scenes with Bob in this year's Furman run to the NCAA tournament and SoCon championship. He's really got deep roots there. They just made a $40 million renovation to Timmons Arena. A lot of that because they know they have a great head coach in Bob Ritchie, always building up a conference contender. But like you said, Kevin, I mean, the money's a factor, the local ties are a factor. But I think that if Bob Ritchie was going to move from Furman, it would have to be an incredibly great offer, like you said, maybe at NC State or a power conference school. In addition to the money bump, I think that would be a huge factor as well if he was to move, but it seems like he's got incredible loyalty, almost a decade at Furman. But let's talk quickly about Clemson men's basketball. They have not a head coaching position to fill, of course. They have 2 assistant men's basketball coaching positions to fill in just over a 1-week span. They had Billy Donlin move on, who was the lead assistant, aka the associate head coach for 4 seasons, the 4 most successful seasons as far as total wins in Clemson men's basketball history. They had 98 wins in a 4-year span, most ever for the Tigers. He's moving on to become the Eastern Michigan University head coach. He's been a head coach before, 4 seasons with the Tigers. He's moving on to Eastern Michigan, the head coach there. And Dick Bender retiring just yesterday, another Tigers assistant. After 40 years in college basketball, you see Dick right there. He spent 14 of those years across 2 trips with the Tigers, also working with Indiana State, Radford, and DePaul, where he was an assistant coach to a player named Brad Brownell, who would then later hire Bender on his first Tigers coaching staff when Brownell became Clemson's head coach 20 years after Bender coached him. Brownell saying about their decades-long relationship, quote, "The mentor he's been and the example he's set has been invaluable in my development as a coach." And Bender saying he's extremely happy to be stepping away, having been part of arguably the best era in Clemson basketball history. The Tigers making 3 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances and now looking to fill those 2 assistant coaching positions. Kevin, lots of movement for Clemson assistants, College of Charleston head coaches on the men's and women's side, and it's pretty impressive that it's happening, boom, right after the season's end.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention Dick Bender also was an assistant at the College of Charleston for a couple of years under Earl Grant. And actually, Grant is a name that I think might be going towards Clemson as well. He could take one of those assistant spots if a head coaching job doesn't work out for him, because we know how close he is with Brad Brownell. You remember earlier this year, Clemson played BC, and Brad talked about how much he hates playing Boston College just because he hates going up against Earl Grant. So I think, especially if this CFC job doesn't end up going to Earl Grant, I think going back to Clemson for Grant, who's been an assistant up at Clemson before, I think that's a move that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, very interesting. Like you said, he's been an assistant before under Brad Brownell early on with Dick Bender on the staff back in those days about 10, 15 years ago. So that could be interesting to fill in the meantime. But Teagan, we have a major move for a Clemson graduate and former Clemson graduate assistant, Will Wade, the, of course, now former NC State head coach. He only spent 1 year there, beat the Tigers at Littlejohn Coliseum in his return to his alma mater. There you see a young Will Wade right there, and got a win over a ranked Clemson team. Wade's NC State team played great at the beginning of the season. They made it into the first 4 and got bounced in the first 4 of the NCAA tournament. Now he's going back to LSU, where he coached for 5 seasons. And then because of the NCAA tampering investigation, or really it wasn't tampering, it was recruiting violations that they were investigating. LSU cut the ties with Will Wade at the time. Then he went down to McNeese, where he immediately led them to a 36-2 conference record across his time there, the highest winning percentage in their conference's history, even upset his alma mater Clemson 2 seasons ago in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and now LSU hiring him back after clearing the air, the benefits that he was trying to get from the iconic conversation with a big blank offer to a recruit. Is now all allowed, Teagan. So the rules that Wade broke or allegedly broke at the time are now basically allowed because of the NIL revenue sharing agreements, being able to pay players. And it's just the college world of sports we live in that he's now back at LSU. But Teagan, your thoughts on this full circle journey, if that's what you want to call it, of Will Wade?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a little bit full circle. I think it was unexpected. It wasn't something that I saw coming. And, the reports are saying that he's signing a 7-year deal as head coach, which is really what sticks out to me about this. That's just insane. I mean, with the changes in college coaching and the cycles every single year, it just seems like if I'm LSU, I wouldn't necessarily want to sign a deal for that long with a coach, no matter, how much confidence you have in them. And especially after what happened between them in 2022, where, they had to separate because of those recruiting issues, Kevin.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that if this goes badly after a year or two, and we talked about this when LSU brought in Lane Kiffin, now all of a sudden that's guaranteed money that they're going to have to pay out. And it's not just a year or two. Now it's 5 or 6 years they're going to have to pay out. So that's a huge commitment. That's a big risk for LSU. But I don't know. It seems like these LSU searches always just feel a little smarmy. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. But Will Wade going back to LSU, that's a big move back in the ACC and in the SEC as well. We're just getting going here on Palmetto Sports Daily. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome back into Palmetto Sports Daily. Of course, we're talking lots of baseball this week with opening day in terms of the pros, but also in college. Conference play continues, and it continues on the road for the Chants. Coastal Carolina traveling to Marshall this weekend, and CCU is number 1 in the Sun Belt standings right now with a 6-0 record, and Marshall is number 2 with a 5-1 record after a loss to Georgia Southern in their latest series. That was an 18-12 loss last Sunday on the road for them in Statesboro. But Coastal Carolina looking to stay alive, looking to stay undefeated in the Sun Belt after sweeping JMU, run-ruling them in all 3 of those games. Here's a look at that matchup right now. I believe this was game 2 from last weekend's series. But Coastal Carolina looking to do what they can without one of their top hitters, Trace Mason, who's out with a broken hand. Also, they still are without Hayden Johnson and Cam Flukie, 2 of their best pitchers on the roster. But there are reports that Flukie is supposed to be back in Week 11. Carmine, what's going on with baseball with you this weekend?
Yeah, well, we got Clemson starting up a series against Miami, trying to lick their wounds and come back strong after they came back strong. I still can't believe this game, midweek game on Tuesday, when Coastal was up 3-0 at Clemson. Clemson took a 9-3 lead, scoring 9 unanswered runs, and then Coastal came back and in the final 3 innings scored 8 unanswered runs to beat Clemson 11-9, and hopefully the Tigers can turn the tide on their momentum on a 4-game losing streak, and Coastal can build on their momentum after an incredible comeback. Coastal a lot happier than the baseball team in your area, Kevin.
Yeah, we had a couple of fun midweek matchups here in the Low Country last night. The Citadel picked up a victory over Presbyterian 9-4, but the big one we're going to be talking about now is over at Patriots Point, the College of Charleston taking on Georgia Southern. And CFC has been struggling lately, struggled on the road last week, or at home last weekend, I should say. Hosting Georgia Southern last night, they got down early in this one, and Chad Holbrook had some discussions early on with the umpires about balls and strikes, and apparently the umpires said something to Holbrook's catcher, and here you can see Holbrook was not having this. Holbrook got right in the umpire's face. He was obviously ejected for this tirade he had. Now this is where I got worried for Chad right there. You see, made a little bit of a belly bump, and I was worried. I like Holbrook a lot. I've enjoyed talking to him the last several years that he's been here, so I was worried that something might come from that one. I should mention CFC lost this game last night 5-2. I did speak to the commissioner of the CAA this afternoon, Joe D'Antonio. He told me that the umpire's report from last night said that there was no intentional contact from Holbrook towards an umpire, so the conference would be taking no additional action. So Holbrook is free to coach this weekend when good. CFC goes up to Campbell. But you see once again, and again, this is where I got nervous. Holbrook obviously got right in his face, and as he was getting ready to walk away, I thought the same thing you did, Carmine.
Ooh.
Thought right there might have been a little bit of a bump, but luckily for Holbrook, luckily for CFC, no further penalties look like they're going to come, at least from the CAA after that action last night. But great video from Bronwyn's story that she got over at Patriots Point last night. And I don't know that I've ever seen Holbrook that animated at any point, whether he was at South Carolina or here at CFC, Teagan.
Yeah, I mean, that reaction right there was insane. I saw that yesterday on Twitter, when you were tweeting about the game, but I'm glad that nothing more came of it. I am curious, though, if he said anything after the game, if there was any statement from him. Not sure if he did a post-game presser. Was there anything from him, Kevin?
No, we weren't there for the end of the game. The school sent out no statement. I haven't heard back from CFC officials. But as far as I know, he is ready to go. CFC officials are probably too busy looking for 2 basketball coaches right now, so didn't have time to worry about this last night.
Right.
And that was actually, Bronwyn actually texted me when this was going on. She said Chad Holbrook just went berserk on the field. And I said, he must be very upset that Chris Mack is leaving. It's the only thing that makes sense, Carmine.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's a good one. And I'm glad that there's no, further punishment. I thought that was a dad bod bump. I thought there was an intentional. If I was going to review it, I thought there was an intentional belly to rib cage contact is what I would have ruled that. But I'm glad no punishment is going to come in addition to the ejection. We'll be right back after a short break with much more. We're talking Braves opening day right after this. Well, we are just as fired up in a positive way as Chad Holbrook was angrily yesterday for the Braves opening day. Their first game of the season is coming up right around the corner, and you can watch this on Palmetto Sports and Entertainment Network Friday at 7:15. So very exciting. You can watch that live and for free on our network, PSEN, where you could be watching Palmetto Sports Daily right now. The Braves starting the season with yet another injury, though, guys, and it's the former Clemson star pitcher Spencer Strider heading to the injured list with an oblique strain, and this is one of the things that has been straining the Braves organization the past couple years is all these injuries, and now they start their opening day hosting the Kansas City Royals with another injury. And then Jurickson Profar suspended for the entire season with that PED usage. Walt Weiss coming in as his first year as head coach, taking over for Brian Snitker. In your opinion, Teagan, what should our realistic expectations be for this Braves team starting up play?
Carmine, part of me with a new head coach this year really wants to think positively about this team and think that there's a lot of hope at the beginning of the season with some new leadership involved. But also, you mentioned, again, those injuries just seem to continue to plague this team. Spencer Strider has not been, the pitcher that we saw 3-4 years ago. It's just continued to be issue after issue for him these past couple of years. So while I have a little bit of hope for the team this year, I just don't see them making a huge turnaround compared to last season, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, when you consider that their starting rotation is basically Chris Sale, and then they're a couple of injuries away from calling one of us to come out and throw a couple innings down in Atlanta. I mean, I just don't see how they're going to get much more out of this team than being a 500 squad. I think if you can get around 85, 86 wins and kind of stay in the wild card race going forward, I think that probably best case scenario for Atlanta this year, Carmine.
Yeah, I agree. I think making the playoffs would be a huge vote of confidence after missing it last year. Hopefully they can stay healthy and see what they're able to do. But Kevin, how do you feel about your own teams starting off opening day? I know you probably have some high expectations there, maybe higher than the Braves.
Well, they have to be higher than the Braves. Yeah. As far as Boston, I'm extremely disappointed they didn't sign Alex Bregman and bring him back. He, of course, signed with the Cubs as a free agent after just one season in Boston. And, these owners keep saying, we get rid of this guy and we're going to take this money and spend it on something else. And then they just don't spend it on anything else. So as a fan, it's frustrating. I think they have a great core of young guys right now. Roman Anthony's a guy I think could make a push towards an MVP season this year if he plays as well as he did at the start of last year. But overall, probably a little bit higher than the Braves. I'd say you're looking at like the 92, 93 win range, and I think they'll go to the playoffs. But I think they need to add at least one more bat, Teagan.
Yeah, I totally agree. Boston is my team, too. I know, ignore the fact that I am, in fact, from central New York, but my dad is a Yankees fan, and when I was a kid, I didn't want to be the same, team that he had. So yeah, I do have a little bit of a higher expectation for Boston than the Braves this year. But, Carmine, I know that you're a Yankees fan, right? I heard you earlier before the show talking about the team.
Yeah, and I hope that the Yankees, growing up in New York, in Westchester County, a little further south than you, Teagan, the Yankees fandom, and then, of course, the success they had while we were growing up with all the World Series. I hope they can get back and win another one. I remember going on a duck boat tour on Cape Cod, and when I was wearing a Yankees hat, the duck boat driver taped over my Yankees logo because, of course, that great rivalry being near the Boston area. Wow. But we'll be right back with some college softball. I know you guys approve of that right after this. Welcome back to Palmetto Sports Daily. We're closing out the show just like Clemson softball pitcher Sierra Manis closed out the rival Gamecocks, a complete game shutout, only allowing 4 hits, and Clemson run-ruling the 24th ranked Gamecocks in their own chicken coop in Columbia, 8-0. Here they are earlier in the season celebrating Coach John Rittman's 1,000th career win, just adding on to that in the rivalry. The rematch of this rivalry, April 14th at Clemson. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Happy opening day, and play ball.